The tale starts with a man standing at the top of a mountain made of dead bodies. He turned to Louis and asked why this had happened to him, recalling how they were like brothers who had faced life and death together. That moment brought back the memory of when the disaster first began. Monsters burst out of weird holes in space and started making a mess. As the rifts became known as dungeons and touched by mysterious powers called classes, the class core was born to defeat them and march forward in victory. Yet Louis fixed his gaze on the protagonist, realizing this was exactly why he had to be stopped. The man had lost all control, and since powerful elite users could already shake the empire to its core, he who had gone beyond the highest known rank was now the deadliest threat of all. The royal family had to hold the reins of supreme power, because that was the only way to keep the empire from falling apart. With eyes burning with fury, the protagonist wondered if this was just a trick to let him kill his own family and friends. Louis stared with pure hate in his eyes and explained that he was doing this to keep the empire safe. Right before the hero could breathe again, Louis blew up with a huge boom, showing that he had changed his armor a long time ago. The blast would also push a deadly poison straight into his injuries. Louis knew the hero would be too weak to resist after that SSS rank battle, so he gathered an entire army as his final act of respect. As the protagonist's life faded away, she began to remember the moments she shared with Louis. At that exact moment, his secret SSS rank power, Mirror World, sparked to life and began to undo everything. He gave up his life and let his spirit sink deep into the lake. Years down the road, two boys were cruelly trapping a third one to a tree and dragging him into the cold lake water. One of them punched him in the stomach and yelled at his friend to dunk him again. While they held him underwater, mocking his funny face and promising to beat him more if he kept pretending, the boy ran out of air and had to breathe again. He never could figure out why life always made him the one to take the hit. In that very moment, the hero's spirit finally. A boy in glasses stepped up to the bullies and begged them to stop before his friend lost his life. One of the bullies spun around, sneered, and told him to just use his shanter to heal if he was going to die, knowing it probably wouldn't help much. He then said that the boy with glasses was being fake because he was the one who led them right to him. So if the boy was gone, it would be his own fault, but the boy with glasses was so scared he cried out that someone had made him do it. But then something odd occurred as a bright light started to rise from the lake. The bullies turned tail and ran away, screaming in terror about a dungeon they couldn't handle and trying to escape before something even worse appeared. The boy with glasses kept his eyes locked on the other boy as they tortured him. He saw the boy still under the water, so he sprinted toward the rope to rescue him. Suddenly, the lake vanished and terrifying monsters rose from the dry ground. The boy in glasses began to untie the knots. While he was distracted, one of the monsters suddenly lunged at him. Just as the danger hit, the tied-up boy suddenly grabbed him by his clothes and yanked him out of the way. Then he reached out and unleashed a move called Glacial Impact. The system told him that his basic heal spell on the minor demon failed because the creature's health was already full. The boy with glasses froze in panic, confused as to why he was somehow making the monster better. Just as the monster lunged to strike, he threw up a shield and caught the blow at the very last second. As the hero opened the info window, he spotted his name, Yoon, and noticed he belonged to the Chanter class. He suddenly realized that the healing spell he had just used meant this wasn't really his own body, because normally touching a dungeon would bind a person to a system and give them a random starting class that could never be changed. After that, they would grow and get stronger inside the dungeon by learning new skills that matched their class. But he was a warrior who had climbed all the way to the very top. Once upon a time, he tapped into a power known as the Mirror World. After that, he was stuck in the Mirror World until he heard that boy's final cry. He finally understood that he had come back to life inside that boy's body. This wasn't a happy feeling, but he still thanked the boy for letting him have a shot at revenge. The boy wearing glasses told Yoon that monsters were circling them and begged for instant help since he could only fight 3 of them. The protagonist knew his body was too weak to face even small enemies, and their speed meant he couldn't run away. When he opened his skill window, he found that his basic heal only added a few points of life and his entangling vines rarely succeeded in trapping his enemies. Chanter was too specialized. While it shined at supporting others, it couldn't hold its own in any other role. No wonder everyone looked down on this class, but for now, his old fighting instincts let him hold them off for a little while. Yuna slipped past the monster's blow, desperate to escape before she ran out of energy and died. Now the secret mirror world was his only chance. The hero slipped away from the blow without understanding the trick, touched the monster and watched his power fail because the rules weren't right, leaving him guessing if he was too weak or just needed a real mirror. When he tried using the skill on the monster again, it failed for a second time because he wasn't strong enough yet. Seeing this, he realized the mirror world needed a reflection to work, so since the level problem was still unsolved, he chose to try a different target instead. When the hero tried to use his skill on the monster's weapon, it failed once more because he wasn't high enough in level yet. He tested his magic on a worn-out loincloth, but it failed for the very same reason. The boy in glasses started to panic and shouted for him to stop wasting time on useless tricks because he couldn't hold on much longer. Suddenly, energy poured down from the sky, and a terrifying level 10 beast, known as a malformed overlord, showed up. The boy with glasses knew they were in big trouble because this monster was way too strong for anyone under level 10 to beat. More bursts of energy started falling from the sky, and his eyes grew so wide with fear that he tumbled to the ground. Suddenly, a swarm of terrifying monsters erupted in front of them. As the hero focused on his ability, the monsters rushed forward, and Yoon realized he couldn't use his skill on the rocks, fearing the level gap was too wide. Then the protagonist tried to use his special power on Xiaowe's makeshift shield, but the system said no, explaining that he couldn't undo the abilities of others. Seeing that he couldn't undo other people's powers made him grin because he realized he could undo his own. When the protagonist used his power, the mirror world flipped his entangling vines back on him. Yuna unleashed a storm of wild thorns that suddenly popped up from the ground in thousands. Just as a monster lunged to strike, another wrapped in a glowing red aura swooped in to protect Xiaoji. He felt a little lost, unable to make sense of what was going on. The hero quickly noticed the skill had flipped, turning a freezing grip into a chaotic mess of confusion. The entangling vines skill usually caught only one enemy and rarely held them still. But now, its flipped upgrade called Chaotic Thorns made the thorns lash out at enemies, though they rarely succeeded in confusing them. The monsters started fighting each other because the confusion spell made them attack whoever was nearest. The hero grinned as he saw a useless skill become powerful after being reversed, sparking a thought about what would happen if he reversed all his other skills too. The mirror world lived up to its legendary SSS rank by flipping enemy skills around while making everything better. If he hadn't unlocked the upgraded version of that skill, his chance of success would be tiny and the restraint would vanish in a split second instead of holding strong. Our boy snatched the sword from the dirt and started wondering what would happen if he used his last bit of skill backward. His eyes locked onto the skilled Empowered Strike, a powerful move that burned 20 mana for 30 seconds to give one unit a 5% attack boost. When Yoon reversed the skill, it became Trick Blade, costing 40 mana to last 60 seconds, and giving him a 10% attack boost for every mana point he spent. As soon as he drew his Trick Blade, a fierce energy pulsed around it, and he quickly realized that every move he made would make him 10% stronger, with 60 seconds left on the blade's special power. The moment this was switched on, every skill unleashed a surge of power, and the possibilities were truly endless. Yuna grew stronger and reached level 6. He saw that the monsters were killing each other and dropping plenty of experience points when they fell. When a monster lunged out of nowhere, our boy reacted instantly, and stopped the strike right before it hit. Yoon looked down and saw his HP bar showed 480 health and 120 mana, and he realized that reaching the next level would fill his mana back up completely. Even though the monsters were still causing chaos, he chose to try out this magic blade. Yoon unleashed Chaotic Thorns, burning through mana points to trigger his Trick Blade, which spiked his attack power by 10% with every drop while leaving him with just 12 mana points and a massive 120% boost that would vanish in 44 seconds. His eyes lit up as he locked onto the monster rushing at him. He saw that this trick let him double his attack power easily, breaking every rule he thought existed. As the monster lunged, our boy dodged the strike, slipped behind it, and slashed deep wounds into its back and belly. Jaya was stunned to see Yoon watching him, wondering how such a young chanter had these skills, even as our boy kept fighting and killing the monsters one by one. For level 6 stats, 120 mana points, and 1 mana point regenerated every second, he realized he could theoretically boost his attack power by 2.3 times. He took down a level 11 monster in a heartbeat and couldn't help but smile. He quickly saw that his strength wasn't enough to take on these level 11 elites. Suddenly, a hand broke through the ground. Yoon stared intently as a level 21 monster named Battle Fiend Chimera burst from the ground and let out a terrifying roar. It spun around and took out all the tiny monsters in one quick swipe. Out of record, Chaoji's eyes wide with terror, while our boy stood frozen in shock at the sight of a hidden level 21 boss lurking in the dungeon. Just as our boy unleashed his Chaotic Thorns, the boss charged right at him, only for the attack to fail because the monster couldn't be hurt by chaos. Just as the monster was about to strike, Chuoji jumped in and raised his shield. Yuna was caught off guard, but soon he spotted someone he knew. A blonde boy shouted "idiot" at him, reminding him he had told him not to rush forward. Our boy's eyes went wide as the boss smashed through Xiaowei's shield, hurling his body hard onto the ground. Yuna sprinted toward him, and as she got close, he opened his hand and started using his special power. He tapped into his magic to heal Xiao for just 1 hit point, spent his own mana to drop to 54 points, and then activated his Trick Blade skill to deal 10% more damage. The moment basic heal clicked back on for Xiaoji, it landed a critical hit and restored 5 HP. Our boy's mana finally hit 1, so he scoffed at the chanter's weak healing and told Xiaoi to drink his emergency potion while his Trick Blade still had 85 seconds left. The boss began slaughtering the other monsters, and Yoon knew he couldn't beat this guy yet, but since the other monsters were almost gone, he had a plan. He flashed his blade, telling Chaju to hang on while he finished the monsters, and she was left a little surprised. Our boy struck with the speed of thunder, cutting the monsters apart until his special blade ran out, just as Yuna leveled up to heal both him and herself back to 80-20 points. By slashing with his trick blade and feeding on the chaotic thorns, he pumped up his attack power by 10% with every use, grinding through monsters to build up enough strength and mana to finally take down the boss. He knew he had to cast chaotic thorns 40 times in 50 seconds, so he had to reach level 10 to make it happen. Chaoji stood frozen, unable to believe the scene right in front of him. Yoon climbed the ranks over and over again. The boss lunged to strike, but our kid suddenly started to glow. He had finally reached level 12. His trick blade, boosted by a massive 5, Yuna struck like lightning, severing its arm before darting around to slash it from behind, filling the monster with terrible pain. Before it could even move, our boy cut it into pieces. So, before anyone could even blink, he had knocked out a level 21 boss with over 10,000 health. After taking down that boss, our boy leveled up 3 times and is now level 15. Chooji stood frozen in disbelief, wondering if he was actually dreaming or if a level 5 chanter had just single-handedly conquered a whole new dungeon. With the dungeon boss finally defeated, the dangerous maze was safe to explore again. He stepped up to Yoon and asked if it was truly him. As the monsters dropped their loot and the system told our hero to pick it up, he wondered how he suddenly became so strong, then remembered his past and seeing Xiaoi's face, asked about his connection to Xiao Benben. Xiaoji stood frozen in shock, completely baffled by how Yoon could know his great-grandfather's secret nickname. Yuna was a bit shocked to find out that he was the great-grandchild of Xiao Benben. He started to think of Xiao Benben, and his heart broke heavy with sadness as he realized every person he knew had been taken by Louis. Just as he was about to ask more about Xiao Benben, Xiao looked away and said there was no need to talk about him right now, reminding him that if Yuni didn't want to answer, he didn't have to say anything. Yuno stood there confused and humiliated, not realizing what was happening. Xiao whispered that Yoon had been hiding his real power all along, even though he didn't know why. He told them to go back to school because the next day was a special trip to the history hall, and skipping class would get them in trouble, which made Yuna so angry he clenched his fists. He agreed to listen, but kept his secret safe for now, because if Chaoji dug too deep, he might start to suspect him. Yuna wondered if the Modern History Memorial Hall had records of what happened after he died. The following morning, they hopped on the subway to head off to school. The students couldn't contain their excitement. Things had really changed a lot. After lying dead for so many years, the world had changed into something completely strange and new. He couldn't believe that products from the dark dungeons were now powering carriages, bringing strange new sights to light that he had only seen in his past nightmares. He checked his system inventory and wondered if only the items dropped by monsters could be removed from the dungeon. He slipped on the Chimera Bone Ring, a level 14 artifact carved from the ribcage of the Flesh and Bone Dungeon Lord, which let him grow a chimera limb right onto his own body. He pulled the Tough Physique book from his inventory, noting its high quality and universal nature, and realized just like gear, these skill books could be bought, sold, and carried around outside the dungeons. He possessed a tough natural body that automatically made him take less hurt from physical attacks. Once the Lord fell and the dungeon vanished, anything left behind that couldn't be saved simply disappeared into nothingness. His eyes shone with confusion as he stared into the unknown, wondering what had become of him after he died. Soon after, he reached the Modern History Memorial Hall and immediately saw the statue of Louis, the king who stopped the dungeon disasters. The teacher led the students through the Memorial Hall, telling them that this very spot had been a battlefield for a famous rebellion just over half a century ago. The teacher told us that back then, people were terrified by the dark dungeons, especially after the most fearsome S-rank dungeon showed up and kept everyone living in constant fear. King Louis marched his brave soldiers into a deadly dungeon, and even though many fell in battle, he finally conquered the terrifying place. But right at that moment, he ran into a rebellion that had been planned for a long time, with Yoon, who everyone knew was the mastermind behind it. Yuno was the man the king trusted with his life, only to betray him in the end. Yuno was furious to see that history had been reduced to the point where the heroes who cleared the S-rank dungeon were the ones ambushed. The teacher gripped his fist tight, saying he couldn't picture how much it hurt to be let down like that. Their king conquered that sadness by fighting with blood and courage. Finally, with the hero Dingun's help, he put down the rebellion. When Yuna heard the name Ding Kun, her eyes sparkled with curiosity. He wondered if anyone like that even existed. The bullies who had been tormenting Yoon in the lake suddenly showed up, confused to find him and Zhao Ji still alive after being dragged into the new dungeon. One of the bullies claimed the dungeon was already cleared, and he guessed that a master must be nearby if it happened so fast. He said they were incredibly lucky to find that master, whose attention was locked on the very men torturing the owner of his body, so everyone rushed to Ding Shu to hear what he was talking about. They stared in total disbelief, wondering if he had truly stumbled into a new dungeon and survived the disaster inside, while Ding Shu put an arm around Xiao Unkit's shoulder and joked that he was lucky to make it out alive. He started whispering that they had nearly dragged them into the dungeon that day and were demanding to know how they would pay off the debt. Hyo panicked and made it obvious that Ding Shu was to blame. He threatened to call the police, claiming that the other man had nearly killed him and Yoon. Dingshu grabbed Chobo by the head to ask what he was thinking, only to see that Chobo had no clue what was happening. Dingshu terrified ex-Chobo Ji into staring at the statue, forcing him to watch his ancestor being crushed by the hero, while Dingshu confessed he was the traitor Zin and that Xiao Ji was his own descendant. Finally, he asked if he really thought anyone would stand up for him. Dingshu started shouting that Xiao could mock him but never his ancestor, leaving Xiao stunned. Everyone rushed to gather around, knowing that Dingshu's grandfather was the hero Dingun. When he heard those words, his eyes lit up with anger. The students turned and saw the person sitting next to them was Xiao Ji, Xiao's own descendant. To them, seeing a traitor's child mock a hero felt like the whole world had gone mad, especially since they remembered how Shayan's ancestor had killed so many people and saved countless others by stepping in. Dingshu started to faint, showing he didn't care what people said behind his back, but he couldn't let them insult his ancestor right in front of him. The teacher walked up to Xiao, put a hand on his shoulder, and asked him to say sorry, reminding him that he had always been fair and even told him that the hero had already forgiven his family before. He decided that even if he couldn't feel grateful, he still had no right to spread lies about him. Once he finished speaking, the teacher walked away. Dingshu slapped his head and admitted that if anyone beat him up in public, the crowd would just cheer louder. No one stopped to help the vicious dog being beaten, especially since Xiao Ji was already hated by everyone. He pulled Choja by the hair and demanded to know if he truly thought that a hero's son could ever be wrong. He was about to strike Xiaowar when someone suddenly kicked him in the face, knocking him straight to the ground. Xiaowe's eyes went wide with shock. It was Yoon, his eyes burning with rage as he sneered that the hero's family had no time to teach their kids a lesson. The students hit record, stunned that the quiet, parentless boy, who used to be the weakest and loneliest in class, had suddenly gone crazy and dared to punch Dingshu. Dingshu wiped his cheek to show that Yoon was just taking a beating and should be lucky he wasn't still chasing him, especially since Yoon had the nerve to attack him while he wasn't looking. He and his friends began running straight at our boy. Yoon moved with the speed of a thunderclap, slipping past their blows and landing a hit before they could even blink. Dingshu dropped to his knees, spitting blood onto the dirt. The students started to whisper to each other. Dingshu stood frozen in shock, unable to believe how fast Yoon was moving. The students stood puzzled, wondering how he had been beaten so quickly and if Dingshu was truly just a weakling. Dingshu exploded with rage, unable to believe a useless level 5 support could suddenly beat him, so he immediately unleashed his hell skill to boost his attack power by 25%. He strapped on a hammer made of fire that gave him 314 attack points, convinced Yoon was just lucky, and without hesitation, he charged right at him. Our boy darted forward to seize the opening, landing a hard punch on his jaw while channeling the blade of trickery to boost his strike power by 80%. Dingshu was stunned as our boy kicked him, sending him crashing hard to the ground. The guard rushed in, saw Yoon stepping on Dingshu, and immediately shouted, "Is there a healer here?" The students couldn't believe their eyes as Yoon zoomed past them, thinking he was just a tiny level 5. Even the blonde girl and her friend stood there, stunned and unable to believe what they had just seen. The guard told us that fighting was banned in the hall because it could ruin things, and then he asked the teacher why he couldn't keep his students in line. The teacher marched toward Yoon because this guy had insulted a hero, and even tried to hurt his descendant. He called Yoon shameless, so the teacher drew his sword and Yuna's eyes locked on him. Our boy used the ring, and when the teacher lunged, his sword shattered into pieces, leaving everyone stunned, while Yuno quickly cut off the talk of shamelessness to point out that the teacher seemed biased toward Dingshu's side and was likely just trying to please his own family. With a strong energy radiating from him, Yoon explained that he was just joking and didn't really think the teacher was that kind of person. The students were stunned that Yoon could block the teacher's blow, prompting the teacher to vow an investigation, while secretly wondering if Yoon had secret support like his own. The ring Yoon wore was a Chimera bone ring that had already taken a 37% hit to its strength, making it a risky choice since this epic quality gear came from a level 21 lord and was too weak to fight a level 35 teacher. Yuna begged to be kicked out of the hall along with Xiaoji as punishment. Axe rose and trailed our boy with a puzzled look, while the students stared in disbelief that Yoon had blocked the teacher's strike and wondered if a student could really pull off such a feat. The teacher told his students to cast a healing spell on Dingshu. Meanwhile, our boy and Chobo walked out of the hall together. He felt so sad that he couldn't believe it was true. Nobody was left alive, and Benben had already been killed by that so-called hero. His eyes locked onto Choija, knowing that if he spoke now, the other would answer without a second thought. He coughed and admitted he wasn't much of a history buff, so he asked the other one to tell him all the great things that hero Dingkun did. Choi grew nervous and admitted he wasn't sure if he remembered right, but it looked like the hero Dingun had already uncovered the villain Yoon's secret plot. Away, he told how he set up a trap near the top-tier dungeon to help out, and that's exactly how they solved the whole rebellion. Yoon felt a shock, and suddenly his memories of their past life flooded back, especially the ambush they had faced. Chovo explained that the hero Ding-kun had dreamed of solving the dungeon crisis since he was young and trained hard all along. After the king named him a hero, he spent years fighting across the land to stop disasters like the terrible Great Cataclysm of Winterfell City. Yuna looked down at the ground, lost in thought as the picture of him standing atop a mountain of dead bodies filled her mind. Yoon looked sad and asked about the sword held by the hero's statue. Xiaoji revealed that the flowing cloud sword the hero used to slay the traitor Yoon was a legendary top-tier weapon, and the tale only grew more thrilling as he spoke. Yuna's eyes burned with fury as they had stolen his glory, his achievements, and even his sword, so he made up his mind to kill Ding-kun first. Outside the Ding family home, a few powerful warriors were walking around to keep an eye on things. Suddenly one of them's eyes started glowing because he noticed something. Not far away, he spotted Yoon and Xiao slipping into a narrow alley. He chose to ignore them, believing they were just passing through. Yoon noticed the man was so alert, he looked like a wanderer who had a scout skill. Xiaoji told Yuna they had to leave right away because there were too many guards, and even if they got inside, Ding Shu's return would mean their game was over. Though Ding Kun wanted to rush in and kill the hero, he knew it couldn't be done. Xiaowei said that Ding Kun spent every single moment of his time deep inside a dangerous high-level dungeon. Unlike before, where anyone could wander in and out of dungeons, those high-level dungeons were now locked tight behind military guards, who demanded a special pass, yet he was certain that Dingun's family must have one of those passes hidden somewhere in their home. Our boy wondered if his family really needed so many guards, since they were just one small branch among dozens of descendants of Dingun. Chooji finally admitted they were the descendants of a legendary hero, and that their very own home held a hidden dungeon. Our boy's eyes popped wide when he found out they had a secret dungeon right in their own house. Ixtal pointed out that while the weak dungeons had long been traded on the black market, such power was a dream no one without influence could ever hope to have. Ding Shu always had bodyguards nearby, letting him farm monsters and level up whenever he pleased, while ordinary students like them could only fight for monsters during school dungeon trials. Yuna noticed the world had changed and wondered if wealth and power now meant higher levels, while Xiaoi confirmed that most people stop progressing around level 20 because they can no longer enter the dangerous dungeons where they used to grow. If you took on a job in the national dungeons, like being a miner or a ranger, you could easily reach level 30 by the time you were middle-aged. Unlike others, the guards at Ding Shu's house used their family's dungeon to train up to level 30. To climb to a higher level, you had to be picked up by the army or join an official group like a guild or academy, which was the only way to unlock stronger dungeons and grow your power. Our boy realized that to get stronger he had to pass that test. Chowo urged them to turn and run, insisting that the guards were simply too strong for him to hope against. Yuno knew his power was too weak to even scratch the hero, let alone the heavily guarded Supreme King Lu away, but he knew that the skills you could learn by level 30, like Eagle Eye or Enhanced Hearing, were too small to guard the whole mansion around the clock. Plus, this wasn't a deadly trap, and most of the guards were too lazy to care. He realized it was plenty to fit inside, but Xiao froze in panic. Yuna climbed the wall, feeling like this was a breeze compared to his past life's perfect scouting, while Chouji warned that slipping into this private dungeon could still lead to death with no one to blame. Our boy lunged forward, yanking Xiao's shirt to demand that he finally change his life. Yes, Chouji admitted he did it, but he had planned to wait until he joined a guild. Yoon asked if he truly thought a guild could change things for him, like Xiao Yaja, the great-grandson of the traitor Zen. Xiao's eyes grew heavy with sadness. Our boy hauled him up the wall and made it clear that we can only change our destiny right now, not by gambling on a what-if that he wasn't even sure of himself. Yuna saw the dungeon right there and didn't want to miss it, so she let him decide if he wanted to come along. Xiaoju started to sweat, while our boy thought hard about whether the descendant would make the same choice as his ancestor. Xiaoji jumped up because he simply couldn't let him die. Yoon whispered for him to stay silent, pointing out that no signs of a summoning scout existed here. As long as they whispered, stayed out of sight, and struck at the perfect moment, slipping into the Ding family compound was easy, so Yuna grabbed Xiaoji and, following his plan, they slipped right in. Xiaoji's eyes were locked on the dark dungeon opening beneath his feet. As they stepped into the dark dungeon, they found two monsters, a level 6 and a level 8, and our hero noticed the levels were a bit higher than before, but there were fewer of them, likely because Ding Shu's family had been hunting them down for a long time. Our boy told us there were only two little groups of people left and asked us to give it a shot. Xiaoji was so scared he refused, saying there was no way he could win. Our boy made him fight, and when the monsters attacked, he raised his shield to protect himself, still struggling to believe that Yoon trusted him to win. Chaja felt his heart race and wished he had never left his home. He just wanted to go home. Yoon pushed him to fight back, but Xiaoji just asked how he could find a way to strike. Yuna promised him that he was on her watch and everything would be okay. Xiao trusted him, swung his shield to strike, dodged a surprise hit from behind, and kept moving. Just as Yoon had guessed, Chaoji turned out to be really talented. Though he was always too scared to fight back and only dared to defend himself, his uncanny sense for where things were kept him from getting seriously hurt, even when it looked like he was in real trouble. Kyojir charged at the monster, but his shield burst into pieces. Yoon moved like a thunderclap, striking down the monster. Xiaoju felt a bit stunned as he leveled up to 7. Our boy explained that experience was split based on who dealt the damage, so since he didn't unbalance the monsters, he got almost none since they were the ones who actually killed them, while Yuno, who wielded a crescent-shaped blade carved from a resentful leg bone that boosted his physical attack by 62 and his spiritual power by 11, was the one who killed them. Yuna saw how agile Xiaoyu moved and asked where he spent his points, and Chaji explained that he mostly split them evenly except for his spirit. Our boy remembered that shield bearers rarely got points for being quick. Kyojir admitted that without him, it was hard for anyone to form a party at school because nobody wanted to wait for a slow shield bearer when others would already be taking all the monsters by the time he arrived. Yuna sighed and told him he had to look far ahead. He explained that moving up from level 60 isn't random. For instance, the Bastion Fortress class needs 60 stamina and 90 defense points, so you can't just pile on stats however you like. Chowo pointed out that most people top out at level 40, so aiming for level 60 felt like trying to touch the sky. Our boy put a hand on his shoulder, smiled, and told him he could start dreaming about rank, or even things far beyond it from that moment on. So he had to start thinking about how to move up in his own class. He realized his support class only survived because of the secret mirror world skill, so unless something wild happened, he was ready to switch to a different class. He froze in shock when he realized something amazing. He could make his mirror world skill stronger. Inside the Ding family's secret dungeon, Yoon slashed at monsters with amazing speed, his trick blade skill making his blows stronger until he finally crashed into a level 17 zombie greed demon. The monster, still alive, revealed Trick Blade's strength but also its weakness in long fights, forcing Yoon to fight with low mana and stamina until the beast finally died, proving his body could not endure a prolonged battle. The battle paid off big time, as Yoon surged to level 17 and his health, mana and power points all shot up instantly. He also captured the spirits of 2 elite zombies, earning 2,000 experience points for his SS rank mirror world skill and proving it could finally be leveled up. After the fight, Yoon gathered his loot, happy with the new levels and the adventure in the mirror world. Finally feeling danger near, he climbed higher and spotted Ding family guards patrolling more often. Below, the nervous level 8 hero Xiaoji, now in new gear, urged them to stop because he spotted fewer monsters and noticed that the guards were on high alert, worrying that they might have been found. Yuna agreed that fighting now was too risky, demanding too much constant care and skill, so with his new strength and safety they had to wait. Yuna stared at the new spellbook, discovering a brick spell that could build mana bricks. When the mirror world flipped it around, the skill turned into void, letting tiny things fade away, and he learned that not all reversed powers were meant for fighting, but could also be used for quiet everyday tricks. Yoon peered at his reflection, seeing that his mirror world power was just shy of leveling up, needing a full 30% more experience to break free. Standing on the cliff, he imagined how the power of reversal made him feel unstoppable now, and even stronger when he reached the next level. Yoon's eyes burning with light, he hatched a fresh plan. This dungeon held a special mirror world twist in its monsters. He knew that taking out the boss would boost his skill to level 2, a tempting reward worth the danger of the guards. He slipped quietly through the cave, hiding behind rocks while guards kept checking, which made staying safe very hard. Yuna peeked around and spotted their target, a huge shadowy figure sitting on a throne at the top of the stairs, held fast by thick glowing purple chains and surrounded by many guards. From their hiding place, Choji gasped in shock at the sight of the dungeon boss being controlled like a puppet, while Yoon just nodded, reminding him that powerful clans always guard their bosses just like their own. Yuna looked around at the relaxed guards on the stairs, focused on the glowing purple chains holding the boss, and realized that with so many guards watching, a direct attack was too dangerous to even try. Yuna knew he couldn't take down the boss while all the guards were around, so he spotted his chance when one of them wandered off by himself. He decided to take them out one by one, so he hid his face, unleashed a special blade that doubled his power, and ambushed the guard, leaving him instantly crippled and falling as Choe watched. Yun loomed over him like a shadow, demanding answers to pry out the secrets he needed. Terrified, the guard begged for his life, promising to tell everything and admitting the Ding family hadn't paid him enough to die for them. Yoon listened, seizing the moment to ask about his main goal, slipping into the compound. When Yuna inquired about the hero dungeon pass, the guard was startled and quickly explained that the old master kept many in his study, so they weren't hard to find. The guard was confused and thought Yoon was a crazy fan of a hero grandpa. Scared by Yoon's quiet silence, the guard swore his story was true, claiming he'd watched the old master hand out those passes many times before. He warned them that the secret paths were only temporary clues, and without someone on the inside, they would be caught. Yuno didn't flinch. He grabbed the guard by the collar, told him not to worry, and with a cold look ordered him to empty his pockets, revealing his plan to steal everything and take his identity. Back at the Ding family compound, Yoon grabbed the guard by his shirt and demanded answers, only to feel let down by the single average skill book he offered, much to the terrified guard's relief as he explained that the Ding family kept all the real treasures in their inner home and left the outer guards with nothing but scraps. Yoonchua unlocked Sunlight Baptism, a special passive power that boosts his defense for a short time whenever he heals. He used the Mirror World to turn it into Moonlight Blessing, a powerful attack buff that gave him extra damage right after healing, and he remembered that both the skill and the dungeon passes were kept inside the inner residence. The guard gestured toward the fancy house inside, saying that folks like us can't get past the front gate unless someone up high calls for us. He claimed security was tight, yet with Ding Shu inside, everyone else was level 50 or higher in top gear, so they didn't even need guards outside. Yuna grabbed the shaking guard and asked if the pass was at the residence, and he nervously confirmed it while warning that the powerful family head, level 42, was also there, making him a foe Yoon couldn't defeat before detailing just how strong the family really was. Right now, the second family head stands at level 42, the third family head is at level 52, and the old master has reached level 57. He warned that if the two strongest members came back, there would be no escape, so after gathering all the details, Yoon knocked out the guard. He had Chao put on the guard's armor as a disguise to wait for his signal, while Yoon decided to lure the powerful family head out since he was safe inside. Back in the dungeon, Yoon watched the boss, realizing the Ding family had turned a set of easy-to-guard chains into a permanent farm by keeping the boss alive, but he saw a way to break their security. The guards felt safe because they thought no one could unlock the chains, but they didn't know that Yoon, from his past life, knew exactly how to open them. He slipped up to the guard and picked the lock without a sound. As the chains snapped and the furious boss broke loose to go wild, the guards scrambled in terror while the giant monster tore through everything, creating the perfect distraction to lure the family head out of the inner quarters. The plan worked, and as the level 42 family head screamed from his unguarded home to bring guards and reinforcements to the dungeon, alarms blared while he and his men charged forward to face the crisis. Yoon seized the distracted moment to snatch the powerful level 60 chains, binding the boss, knowing his plan worked as the family head and elite guards were busy, leaving him and Chobo free to slip into the inner residence. As Yoon's plan unlocked the door, fresh faces appeared at the Ding family home, where servants welcomed the return of Master Ding Hao, a level 42 warrior, and his son Ding Shu, who rolled up in a flashy car. Ding Hao quickly swung open the car door for Miss Yunsha. Two young women walked out, one with long blonde hair and her dark-haired friend, who was probably Yunsha. The family man with a mustache smiled as he and his team climbed the stairs away from the mess they'd made in the dungeon. His smile disappeared instantly, giving way first to confusion and then to anger. He roughly shoved a bowing steward aside and shouted at him to get out of his path. With the servant lying helpless on the ground, the furious family head stormed straight toward Ding Shu and their two female guests, his face twisted in rage. Hiding in the woods, Xiaojie, dressed as a guard, watched the scene at the house. Yoon popped up right behind him, catching the boy completely off guard. Xiaojie admitted he was scared that the Ding family's return made sneaking in too risky, but Yoon calmly asked why he looked so worried, leaving Xiaojie surprised to see him arrive so quickly. Yuna revealed that the beast he released was a dungeon boss, and since even a level 31 was nearly impossible to catch alive, it would tie up the Ding family's best fighters for a long time. He explained that they couldn't beat the boss anytime soon, which made this the perfect time, so he asked Xiaojie what he had seen. The chaos turned back to the house with a heavy heart. He told the family head that the man he kicked was his youngest uncle, Choi, a powerful level 17 warrior. Yoon listened intently as Xiaoyu shared a dark secret from their past, revealing that the old Yoon's family had been killed before he ever rose in rebellion. Xiaoji explained that this choice spared his family from years of shame and pain, and when Yoon heard about the suffering his old friend's family endured because of lies about their past, his face grew dark with sadness but held a strong resolve. While they watched from the trees, Chovo told his family's sad tale of how the Empire treated them like traitors, destroying their homes and ruining their lives. Moban got even worse when the fake hero Dingkun gave secret orders to bully and hurt the few Chao members left alive. Defeated and with no other way out, the leftover members of the Chao family were forced to work for the very Ding family that had destroyed them. Now they live in poverty, constantly watching their master's face and bowing for scraps, while Chuoji admits with shame that they are paraded around as proof of the Ding family's power and kindness for forgiving a traitor's children. He explained that his father's generation fought back against unfairness to change their destiny. But their hard work turned into disaster, breaking his father's mind until he went wild, while his uncle Zoli became so obedient he acted like nothing more than a dog for the Ding family. Burdened by this hopeless past, Xiaoju started to doubt himself, wondering if it was right to follow Yoon into such danger. Just as his worries started to grow, Yoon stepped forward and told him with a strong voice that he had to head to the inner residence right away. Kobo panicked and grabbed him, shouting that Dingshu's dad, a level 42 fighter, was inside, and Yoon would die if he was found. Yuno stood firm against the danger, telling Xiaoji that in a world ruled by the powerful, no one can change their life without taking risks, and that waiting with fear means some goals will never be reached. So Yuno offered him a choice to help change his fate, but made it clear that Yuno would fight on his own terms, while Xiaoji had to decide to act first. Even though Yoon had a strong will, Xiao was still terrified and doubtful, arguing that the Ding family ruled the entire world and asking how just the two of them could ever stand up to such a mighty force. Yuno turned his back to stare at the distant inner residence, and as he walked forward, he told the stunned Xiaoji that his goal was far bigger than taking down one family, for his true enemy was the entire empire itself. While Ding Hao lounged comfortably on a couch inside the quiet inner residence, served by a maid, he couldn't help but wonder how the dungeon lord managed to break free from its heavy chains. When she saw him, the blonde girl politely asked Dingshu's uncle if now was a bad time, offering to come by another day since there was an emergency. Ding Hao quickly waved away her worries, telling her that his older brother, the family head, could handle it and that a simple dungeon problem was far less important than her visit. He kept smiling and saying that once his strong dad, the old master, and his third brother heard she was on her way, they had already turned around and started rushing back home to meet her. He also mentioned that Hero Grandpa had already been told and was so excited to meet her that he promised everything would be easy. From a secret spot on the balcony, Yoon listened closely and realized the Hero Grandpa was talking about the famous hero Ding Kun. His mind was racing, linking the new facts he'd just learned from the captured guard with what he already knew, that you needed both a special pass and a guide to get into the hero's dungeon. He glanced at the guests and saw how respectfully Yoon Sha was treated, instantly realizing she held a very high status. Then it hit him her name was Yoon Sha, just like his own, and he couldn't help but wonder if it was really just a coincidence. For now, he set that worry aside and locked his eyes on the single task at hand, getting the dungeon pass. As he watched, Yoon Sha stood quiet with a mysterious important presence that made her face impossible to read. While the Ding family's best fighters were busy, Yoon slipped into the inner house, moving quietly through the grand halls, hiding in the shadows, and slipping past two chatting maids. He walked through the fancy hallways of the big house, heading straight for his goal. Outside the dungeon, while the heroes were locked up, the trouble outside was quickly fixed. With the dungeon lord finally defeated, Ding Yi and his troops stood before him, and the family head realized the beast had been released on purpose, though he couldn't figure out who did it or why they'd risk everything for just a few chains. With a fierce desire to keep his home safe, he commanded his guards to rush and encircle the inner part of the house first. His biggest worry was keeping the brave young lady safe from any fright. Inside the study, Yoon began his search and went straight to the desk the guard had mentioned, only to feel annoyed when he opened the drawers and found them empty. Remembering his new trick that let him pass right through solid things, he reversed his brick spell and sent his hand straight through the desk to reveal a secret space hidden inside. He stumbled upon a drawer stuffed with old books and journals. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the items, his eyes stopping on what looked like a diary. He shoved the junk aside to find the real treasure, a stack of rare books, including one that could slow down every enemy in the area, which turned out to be his family's secret stash. Guards stood everywhere at the door to the Ding family's home. Crouching in the nearby woods, Chaji watched in terror as more guards arrived, his panic mounting until he knew Yoon had to escape immediately, or they'd both be caught. The terror of getting caught dragged up dark memories of his father losing his mind and his family drowning in pain, making his only thought escape and save himself. As another guard drew near his hiding place, he froze in terror, unsure of what to do next. Just then, Yoon's words echoed in his mind, reminding him that while he could change with help, he had to make that choice all by himself. Once Xiaoi decided what to do, he shouted loudly just to draw the guards' attention. Suddenly, he exploded from his hiding place and sprinted away to lead them off the mansion, having made his choice to act as a distraction so Yoon would never be found. Yoon watched Xiaoi's bravery from the safety of the mansion. With the guards distracted, he smashed a window and leaped out, feeling proud that his friend had finally conquered his fear to fight his own destiny. To help Shiori get away, Yuna made a huge distraction by jumping among the guards, mocking them and claiming he'd stolen the chains and skill books, which made the angry guards leave their posts to chase him down. As Yuna ran, the stolen aura skill he had just grabbed was flipped by the mirror world to speed up him and his nearby friends, so when the family head Ding Yi saw them sprinting not away from the house but back toward the dungeon, he quickly ordered 2 squads to stop chasing and return to protect the dungeon lord. Xiaoi, sprinting right beside Yuni, was completely baffled as he asked why Yuni was leading everyone straight back into danger. Yuni shared his grand plan, confident that since most of the guards were chasing them, the others must have already conquered the wild dungeon lord. To tame the mighty boss, they had to fight hard, which left the lord so drained that he was now as weak as a kitten. Yoon glanced at his mirror world skill, noting how close he was to leveling it up, and with his eyes glowing purple, he realized that slaying the weakened dungeon lord was the final push his ultimate power needed. The lavish sitting room of the Ding family fell into a heavy, quiet tension. The blonde girl sipping tea politely told Ding Hao, her host, that he could go handle the noise outside. With a confident smile, the second patriarch Ding He waved off the threat as just a petty thief, promising his guest that his brother Ding He would take care of it without a scratch. But things were far from easy, so Grand Patriarch Ding Yi roared in the dungeon, scolding a guard for his delay and ordering him to chase down the rampaging overlord immediately. As Yoon shot past, Ding Yi ordered his swiftest rogues and archers to leave the boss behind and chase the intruder at any cost. Plans fell apart when Yoon shot past them, moving so fast they couldn't keep up. He knew he had the edge, so he'd spent half his bonus points boosting his agility. His crazy backward speed was so extreme that only elite level 30 rogues or archers could keep up with him. He stepped into the main chamber to find the skeletal overlord trapped and bleeding out while its guards desperately tried to cast a spell to seal the ceiling. Yoon smiled at his perfect plan as the boss grew weak, so he unleashed a burst of purple energy to land the final blow and crush the dungeon lord. As Yoon got closer, the guards watching over the overlord saw him right away. They screamed warnings and rushed to block his way, but before they could stand their ground, Yoon unleashed a storm of chaotic thorns, with purple thorny vines bursting from the earth and whipping at them in a display the guards had never seen before. The thorns tried to poison the guards, but Yoon's power was so strong that even the toughest men couldn't stand against it. The terrifying outcome was immediate. Guards became confused, a mage blasted a comrade with a powerful spell, and their ranks descended into chaos. The other guards stood frozen in shock, unable to believe that such a powerful trick worked every single time. As the enemies turned on each other, Yoon jumped in to strike. He slipped past the messy crowd of guards like a ghost and stood right in front of the low-health overlord, who was waiting to be taken down. The guards' defense fell apart as Yoon slipped through, causing them to panic and yell in confusion while their shields failed and they accidentally knocked their own allies down. Yoon saw they moved clumsily together, proving they were just a crew of individuals with no real experience fighting as a team. He thought that living too long had made them soft, which is why they ended up falling. The guard captain gathered his men, promising that if they held the intruder in place, the intruder would be dead. Right then, the first patriarch Ding Yi showed up and ordered his men to hold Yoon in place. The level 42 warrior in fiery gear stepped forward and said he would handle the intruder himself. He jumped forward with his blazing weapon ready to strike Yoon down. Yoon watched the old leader come closer, getting ready for what was next. He let out a scoff and stepped right up to meet the attack. He reached into his bag and pulled out the level 60 fighting chains he had snatched earlier. Even though he wasn't strong enough to carry their heavy armor, he knew their bodies were built to take any hit. As Dingji's fiery blast came down, Yoon held up his chains like a shield and stopped the powerful explosion from hitting him. Yoon smartly turned Dingyi's fiery attack into a super boost, shooting him backward like a cannonball and smashing through the magic seal his friends were holding. He landed right on his feet in front of the broken dungeon lord. With one last cheeky jab, he thanked the furious patriarch for the ride. Before the guards could react, Yoon declared he was going to steal the overlord's experience. With one final mighty strike, he brought the battered beast down and the reward was instant and massive. Yoon surged 3 levels to 20 and earned 9 brand new attribute points. Most importantly, the dungeon lord's years of experience finally unlocked his secret skill, Mirror World. A system message popped up, confirming the skill had finally climbed to the longed-for level 2. Blazing with rage over his stolen kill, First Patriarch Ding Yi screamed and lunged at Yoon with his burning axe. Following their leader, the rest of the guards charged ahead, ready to grab the bold intruder who was standing right in front of the giant dead body of the dungeon lord. But Yoon didn't fear. Instead, he focused on the power his new ultimate skill gave him at level 2. Just as Dingyi's mighty strike was about to land, it slipped right through a glowing copy of Yoon, who then disappeared into thin air. The guards froze in place, baffled by how he had simply vanished. Yoon found himself in a completely new place where the world had turned into a silent crystal blue-green dungeon, so he activated his hidden mirror world skill. In this strange dimension, he spotted ghostly clear copies of Dingyi and the other guards, and seeing a timer that meant his mirror walk would last nearly 30 minutes, he realized with excitement that he could finally step into the world inside the mirror. In that strange blue-green world, Yoon began to use his new power, and realized everything was a perfect mirror of our world, left to right, so when he touched a ghostly guard, his hand went right through it. But when he touched the crystal-like ground and found it solid, he knew this place was real and not just a trick. His search ended with a huge discovery. He grabbed a heavy crystal from the floor, and a message revealed it was a mirror shard he could actually pull from this world and carry into the real one, which was a massive deal for Yoon. He realized his level 2 mirror world skill let him pull real things from that other place, right into his own. Curious about what other changes the upgrade had brought, he took a look at his system screen. He stared in confusion at a strange list of powerful reverse skills like invisibility and force fields, most of which were grayed out and inactive. A note flashed up to say these were skills we hadn't learned yet. He suddenly grasped the full might of his new power, realizing the list displayed the upside-down versions of every skill he could master. He realized that before he could use any of these powerful skills, he had to first find and learn their ordinary forms in the real world. The simple trick he used at level 1 was just the tip of the iceberg, and realizing he could now choose powerful skill pairs to shape his entire class path changed everything. While Yoon was dreaming about how powerful his new skills could be, something suddenly touched him from behind. He turned and spotted a faint blue-green human figure drifting through the crystal air, wondering if it was a trapped soul, just like the one he had been stuck with before he was brought back to life. The idea hooked him, so he asked if other souls were there too. Suddenly, a peaceful soul burst into green energy, warped into a screaming bone monster, and charged straight at him. Yoon, caught off guard, whipped out his glowing blade and stepped up to fight. Easily smashed the undead creature with one swing, noticing it wasn't very strong, but as soon as he finished it, a new message popped up offering him a deal. He could let the soul of the being he just defeated leave the mirror world to fight for him in the real world, with the promise that the soul would always stay at his own level and he could make this same deal with 20 such souls. That surprising turn made Yoon wonder how his new power could change things, while Yoona pondered what this gift truly meant for him. Now he knew that after defeating a zombie in the mirror world, he could bargain with its soul to pull it into reality as a powerful fighter, and holding the mirror shard he had materialized, he realized his power wasn't limited to stones. The level 2 upgrade to the mirror world was a game changer that let him bring not just items but an entire army of undead from the mirror world into the real one, and gazing at the vast crystal landscape full of possibilities, he found the idea fascinating. Back in the real world, things were chaotic as the dungeon vanished with its lord defeated, leaving a stunned army of guards baffled, and one captain frantically wondering if it was a masterful stealth trick that made the intruder disappear into thin air. The rogue expert shook his head fast, admitting his stealth had a hard limit and he couldn't make someone vanish like magic. The missing answers made another captain furious, so he grabbed the rogue and demanded to know how the intruder escaped with so many people inside, while the first patriarch Ding Yi grew even angrier after losing his private dungeon and grabbed a man by the face to yell that if they couldn't find the culprit, they would have to pay for the loss. As Yuna's time in the mirror world ran out, he wondered if he'd pop back in the same place, or if there were other ways to leave. A moment later he found himself back in the real world, right where he had vanished. Angry Ding Yi spotted him instantly and, without a second thought, roared for his men to grab him. As the Ding family's fighters launched a fresh assault, Yoon stood his ground with a cool smile, raising a hand where a swirling green glow pulsed as he warned them to slow down, declaring that after being overwhelmed for so long it was finally his turn to turn the tables. With that, he unleashed the power from the mirror world, and a flood of spooky skeleton warriors burst out to form a terrifying undead army that charged right at the shocked guards. The guards froze in pure fear, their strikes growing weak as they stared at the ghostly shapes and wondered if they were actually spirits. The first patriarch, Ding Yi, tried to calm the growing fear by yelling at his men not to panic, insisting the creatures were just undead monsters he had seen many times before. A guard faced a skeletal warrior, but was shocked to see a health bar appear above the undead skeleton who was just level 20 like Yoon, yet the fear was still overwhelming. Iji's face twisted in rage at his men's hesitation, so he promised a bonus to anyone who attacked and caught the intruder. The promise of a reward suddenly gave them the courage to face their fear. Just as the guards turned from the undead horde to focus on Yoon, he was suddenly gone, leaving them confused and scanning the area, unable to figure out where he had vanished to. After sending his fresh undead minions to draw attention, Yoon stepped back to watch from a safe spot, seeing that his army was still far too weak to win the fight. He realized that if he could find and make deals with stronger souls, the disorganized guards would be no match for him. But he was stuck with only what he could find, having already struck deals with the 20 strongest souls he'd met in the little part of the mirror world he'd explored. Also, he soon discovered that his journey in the mirror world wasn't infinite, as he had bumped into a wall that kept him stuck within 200 meters of where he entered, so he realized he would need to find new entry points in the future to discover stronger undead. His plan fell apart the moment he spotted his friend Zhao Ji, who had been holding off the enemy, hiding out in the woods. One of the guards sneered at the disguised boy, mocking him and teasing him about the big reward he'd get for catching him. Without missing a beat, Yoon jumped out of the shadows and quickly knocked down the guards, putting his own friend in danger. Now that the way was clear, he seized the stunned Zhao Ji and told him it was time to go. Seeing his undead horde hold off the guards, Yoon knew their work was done and decided it was time to retreat, escape the danger, and properly inspect his new loot. While Yoon and Xiaowei ran away, the other guards from the Ding family stayed behind to fight the army of undead. The guards swung wildly at the bone warriors, shattering their ribs with every hit. The guard leader thought the monsters were weak, but that feeling didn't last long. Jamorer, any skeleton that was defeated would instantly spring back to life, forcing them to keep fighting against endless waves of revived bones. Just as the guard was losing hope, Dingay, a powerful level 523 head of the Ding family, strolled in calmly with a cigarette, realizing the skeletons were just magic puppets that would crumble once their summoner ran out of energy, so he simply smiled and decided to kill them all until their master collapsed. After the wild fight was over, the old family head with his long white beard came back and rushed to ask if Miss Yunsha had gone. Inside, his son Dingha bowed deeply and apologized for failing to keep her there, explaining that an incredibly bold intruder had scared their guest away by shouting and even smashing a window. The old master, the terrifying level 57 Ding Dan and son of hero Ding Kun, roared in fury at his son for letting a thief get in and leave without anyone knowing who he was. Dingho bowed his head in shame and took the blame all on himself. But Dinghao brought good news. Even in the chaos, Miss Yunsha agreed to enter the dungeon, so hero Dinghao's grandfather was safe. The angry patriarch wasn't soothed, and Ding vowed to punish the wrongdoers without mercy. He then impatiently shouted at his son to hurry up and check what else had been taken. Yoon stepped back from the chaos to check his loot and noticed the stolen temporary dungeon pass he'd taken, which still had Jiaowei's name on it. He held the pass he needed, but since the hero's dungeon required an escort, he chose to take his time and solve that problem later. He checked his extra loot from the Ding family house and found it so profitable that it bumped his level all the way up to 20. His powerful Chimera bone ring was nearly shattered, blocking a fierce attack, yet he had snatched more than 10 valuable skill books, discovering that one contained all the chant-based support abilities. He learned a battle chant that made his attacks hit harder and more often, but it made him weaker to get hit. He instantly thought of turning the shield chant backward, a reverse spell meant to do the exact opposite. He realized that by mastering and flipping these support skills, he could skyrocket his stats, giving him the power to crush anyone his own level just by being stronger. After the Dungeon Lord dropped his rare level 30 Corrupted Knight's armor along with the skill books, the hero knew this powerful gear would come in handy down the road. But most of all, he had finally unlocked his secret power, Mirror World, to its second level. Yuni thought about his new powers and realized his necroantic summons made him stronger in battle, but he knew it still wasn't enough. As he stared at the statue of the hero Dingkun, Yoon realized his enemy was at least an S-rank berserker, and that he'd need to reach level 50 and summon an S-rank necroantic spirit to stand a chance. Once they were safely away from the Ding place, Xiaoji, still trembling from the scare, nervously asked Yoon if anyone was following them. Yoon calmly assured them they were safe because no one saw their faces, but Xiaoji still felt uneasy, so Yoon noticed how hard that must have been for him, and then, seeing his undead army was too weak, he decided on his next move. He asked Xiaoji if any strong person had recently died in a nearby dungeon, and when she looked puzzled, Yoon explained that he needed a tougher place to grow faster and that the specific reason for the powerful person's death would make sense later. After a short pause, Chovo nodded and confirmed the place existed. But he hesitated, worried that they couldn't sneak into the school's secret dungeon. The news made Yoon pause, imagining a tightly guarded dungeon, but he stood firm, deciding that if the normal way was blocked, he would find a special path to get what he wanted. To slip into the school's secret dungeon, Yoon handed his teacher a rare purple skill book he'd stolen from the Ding family as a bribe, and the trick worked because the teacher, now thinking Yoon had powerful connections, admitted he couldn't easily change the fixed rules. However, he pointed out a way to get in. The dungeon was open to graduating students. Even though Yoon wasn't usually qualified, a teacher who saw his amazing potential promised to get him into the program, and the plan worked perfectly. Yoon stepped in with the students to face the school's brave dungeon. While other students either tried hard to impress or just praised the hero, one grimly thought this might be his final shot to get stronger, another simply thanked him, but as Yoon walked past the glowing portal, a strange chill made him feel this dungeon was definitely off. The teacher spoke with excitement about the place where the hero once battled, warning that his power might still linger in those walls. Chobo stood nearby, his face hard with shock as he realized the brave dungeon was the same place the Empire's lies claimed hero Dingkun had killed his own great-grandfather, the traitor Chioen. Knowing the dark truth, Chiao hesitated, wrestling with himself over whether he should tell Yoon the dungeon's real history. As students crowded at the dungeon entrance, the teacher issued his final warning to stay within their limits before pointing out the red-haired student in armor, Little Z, and telling him to keep an eye on Yoon and Chooji. Lil Z was clearly annoyed, grumbling that he couldn't get his level up while he had to babysit. Another student shoved him forward, telling him to stop whining since the dungeon was open, and though Z grumbled about why younger kids were allowed in, he stepped inside with the rest of the group. With a sneer, he commanded Yoon and Xiaoji to stay out of the way, warning they'd be left behind if they became a nuisance. As the group stepped into the vast, purple-hued space, where Yoon quietly scanned their new surroundings. He knew it was supposed to be a level 20-40 dungeon, but his past life instincts screamed that something was wrong, filling him with a deep unease as he felt a danger far too great for a place of that supposed difficulty. As the group ventured deeper into the glowing purple dungeon, Yoon spotted Yoon Yin and her blonde friend Yoon Sha inside, wondering how these young students were even allowed in. Colonel Z, who was watching Yoon, spotted the girls and pointed them out to another student in armor. The student instantly imagined walking arm in arm with the beautiful girls. His daydream was abruptly ended by a tall, serious student in a helmet who slapped him and told him to stop, revealing that Yoon Yin and Yoon Sha were far stronger than him since they were both over level 30, leading the dreamer to scoff that the girls should be asking the boys for help because he wasn't good enough for them, only for the embarrassed student to mutter that he was just talking. While the older students chatted, the daydreaming boy quietly watched Yoon Sha and Yoon Yin. To his and his friend's surprise, the two younger students ignored them and strode right up to Yoon and Xiaoju. Yuna watched them get closer, puzzled, while recognizing Yoon Sha as an important guest from the Ding family whose bold move made him suspicious, leaving him to wonder if she knew who truly owned his body or if she was angry about how he publicly embarrassed Ding Shu. Yoon Sha walked up with a warm, confident smile, telling Yoon she'd seen him at the memorial hall and praising his fighting skills and that special voice of his. Yoon wasn't sure what she wanted, thinking she was just chatting, but then Yoon Sha's eyes flashed gold as she leaned in, showing she recognized his voice from the breaking glass during his escape from the Ding family home, which stunned Yoon and made him shout in alarm that this powerful girl had figured out he was the intruder from just 2 sentences. Once she had made her point, Yoon Sha's outfit instantly shifted into a white mage-style battlesuit. Yoon Yin put on her dark green energy outfit just like them, and after Yoon Sha told a surprised Yoon that they should check out the dungeon first, she took her friend off to explore. As they walked away, Yoon thought hard about what just happened, realizing she knew he was the intruder but chose to warn him quietly instead of calling the guards. He worried that Ding Shu might have recognized his voice from their last fight and realized who he was. Yoon chose to ignore the worry for now, trusting that his quick growth would soon make him powerful enough to handle whatever the Ding family tried. He saw her acting friendly, so he decided to give her a warning. He shouted a warning to stay safe because his gut feeling told him the dungeon was hiding a real danger. Yoonsha paused and nodded, whispering to her friend that the place felt weird, which puzzled her since her powerful skills should have made the dungeon feel safe. She gave Yoon one last knowing smile, thanked him for the warning, and then she and Yoon Yin kept moving forward. The friendly chat between Yoon and the high-status girls didn't escape notice, as the older students watched in disbelief and spread gossip about the usually cold Yoon Sha, only to be driven by jealousy and surround him, demanding to know about his relationship with her and insist on an introduction. Yoon didn't want to hear them, so he shut them down and told everyone that Xiao and he were heading off on their own to explore. The older students were stunned by his overconfidence and warned him that the level 20 monsters would definitely kill them while they were still young. To their shock, their boss Little Z let the pair walk free, reasoning that since Yoon was friendly with the mighty Yoon Yin, he must be quite powerful himself. While others protested and reminded him of their teacher's orders, Little Z's true motive was revealed in his thoughts as he aggressively reminded his friends that their real reason was to find precious crystals so he could keep the loot all to himself. He made his call by coldly ordering the group to ignore them, claiming they had signal guns if they ever needed help. As Yoon and Xiaoji walked off, he glared at them with anger, unable to understand why a simple kid like that could capture Yoonsha's attention. His jealousy twisted into pure hatred, and he convinced himself that Yoon's arrogance meant he deserved to die. Soon after Yoon and the others went into the dungeon, the angry Ding Shu burst onto the scene at the entrance. A man and a woman stepped up to ask him what he was up to. Filled with anger, Ding Shu gripped the man's shirt and asked if a team had just gone inside, while the staff member demanded to know what he planned to do. This fight happened right after Ding Shu got tired of talking to his family elders. When he tried to warn them that Yoon and Xiaoju were the ones who broke into their home, Ding Hao just coldly told him to stop blaming them for his public shame, saying he had no time for such small problems. Ding Shu was dead certain he knew their voices from the raid. But Ding Ge shook his head, noting that these intruders were far too skilled to be simple students, as they had slipped past many guards with ease. Ding Ge said that Ding Shu had to show he was stronger than the guards, or he wouldn't be allowed to make his claim. The family head, Ding Don, coldly ordered him to leave so they could get on with their serious business, and since Ding Shu was kicked out, he had no choice but to step up and handle it himself. Returning to the dungeon's entrance, he faced the staff member again and insisted with wild resolve that he had to chase after Yoon and Chaji since they were already inside. Inside the dungeon, Yuno was battling a fierce level 20 crystal giant made of sharp blue shards, but just as he dodged its blows, a far more dangerous foe, a level 30 crystal eye emerged and unleashed a deadly purple energy beam straight at him. Yoon braced himself for the blow as the new monster's terrifying power was revealed. From a distance, a terrified Jaiwei yelled Yoon's name and activated a support skill. Golden shields with angel wings suddenly sprang up around Yoon, blocking the attack with a special skill called Surrounding Shield that gave him a shield strong enough to take 500 hits and block 700 damage for 3 whole minutes. Sha didn't stop there, but instead shouted with all his might, wrapping Yoon in a surge of power that boosted Yoon's attack and speed by 5%, proving he was quickly becoming a brilliant supporter. With Xiao's help, Yoon unleashed a powerful series of attacks on the giant crystal monster. With his trick blade skill pumping his attack up by 70%, he smashed the tough level 30 Eye of the Mountain with one final powerful strike. The win gave Yoon's instant rewards, bumping him to level 21 and handing him 3 fresh points to add to his stats. Chaoji shouted in happy surprise, his eyes wide as he leaped to level 11 and found 3 new points to add to his strength. Yoon told his friend that the shield and the cheering spell he'd used were tricks they'd stolen from the Ding family, and Jai had learned them so well. As Yoon stared at the defeated monsters' remains, he realized their teamwork had improved. Even though these dungeon monsters were strong, Chaoji's new support skills made the battles much easier. As Yoon ventured deeper into the glowing crystal caves of the dungeon, he recalled his teacher's warning about a rare monster known as the Obsidian Beast. He explained that slaying the beast was his only shot at finding a rare skill book for gravity. Yoon saw this as a huge opportunity since he'd already spotted that reversed force field zone skill in his mirror world list, knowing it was essential for his future plans. He wasn't just hunting the beast, but also scanning the spooky, vast landscape where many brave adventurers had died, hoping to find their lingering spirits to join his army. Suddenly he felt danger strike, and his eyes went wide with fear. Deep in the canyon below, a massive beast forged from dark, glowing purple rock rose up. It wasn't just a lone beast. A whole squad of powerful obsidian monsters was marching together through the Crystal Pillar Canyon. Standing on a high cliff, Yoon and Xiao watched the weird scene before them. Yoon noticed the elite beasts were marching together in a huge crowd, and had already walked at least a kilometer, which is way farther than they usually do. His strange, organized actions made him mutter wanderer type, and reach a serious conclusion. Ye spotted that the obsidian beasts were behaving strangely, so he explained they were rare wanderers that roamed the dungeon freely instead of staying in one spot, signaling a much bigger and smarter threat was near. These beasts are far tougher than regular monsters of their size, and will quickly crush any adventurer who isn't ready for them. Long ago, before heroes became powerful masters of dungeons, meeting a wandering monster usually meant facing a deadly battle to stay alive. These beasts were far worse than usual because they weren't trapped underground and could roam free to terrorize towns and bring death and disaster to many people. But Yuna knew that this dangerous gamble offered a reward just as big. Monsters dropped far better loot than normal creatures, making them a deadly but incredibly rewarding challenge for any brave adventurer willing to face them. Leon knew that with such a horde of obsidian beasts circling, he couldn't afford to slip up. Knowing the monsters were far too powerful to charge it directly, he chose to test their limits first, only to see his first glimpse reveal a defense that was incredibly strong. These level 30 obsidian crystal beasts were almost impossible to defeat because they were constantly healing themselves. Before he could think of a new plan, the beast struck back with a powerful, coordinated blast of energy beams they called mana rays. Yuno darted through the storm of attacks with his speed and his winged shields, but there were just too many hits, and one beam finally sliced through him, soaking his back in blood and sending a sharp shock of pain. He soon found out that his incredible speed still couldn't help him avoid every single one of them. Amsopur told him just how close to the edge he was, knowing that without Xiaoi's protective shield, that single hit would have nearly killed him. Realizing he was too weak to fight directly, Yoon pulled out his backup plan. He called upon his army of green flame skeletons to hold off the dark beasts. But the gap in their strength was too wide, as the elite monsters ripped through his summoned army, while his skeletons' lives faded fast. He saw that his dead soldiers couldn't stop the strong foes, so he wisely pulled back, happy that the giant monsters moved so slowly and gave him a chance to escape. He knew his poor health and weak defenses were flaws that couldn't be fixed in a hurry. He knew the only way to win was to lean on Xiaoi's defense, so Yoon explained his plan to boost her power by hunting weaker monsters first. They headed to a safer land with weaker monsters, and Yoon spotted a group of enemies he'd seen before, pointing out that they were just right to help Chaoji get stronger. When the group fights, the shield bearer is the one who stands in front to protect everyone. The shield bearer stands firm in front of the other classes, taking the hits so they can attack safely from afar. Following Yoon's advice to aim for rank, Chaoji wisely poured all his new stat points into defense, and with the stolen armor, he now stood as a true shield bearer who could easily tank hits from level 20 monsters, taking only a scratch. Under Yoon's skilled guidance, Xiaor started training his body to become a true shield bearer. From afar, Yoon called out tips to help his friend hold a strong defensive pose, showing him how to move his weight, keep his body steady, and turn his shield to stop an attack, which worked when Chao blocked a crystal monster's heavy hit and felt proud to see his shield last longer than before, even though he still knew he had a lot to learn. As Yoon warned him to watch for follow-up attacks, the monster hit again, catching Xiaoji